Let's talk about the economic showdown between the United States and China. For years, America tried to get tough on China with tariffs, hoping to make Chinese goods more expensive and boost American industry. But here we are in 2025, and China's economy is still going strong, like a marathon runner who just won't quit. Instead of collapsing, China adapted, pulling off what looks like an economic magic trick. The big question, how did China do it? This isn't just about numbers, it's about strategy and a shift in global business. China made new friends, invested in itself, and turned its population into an economic engine. So let's break down what tariffs were supposed to do, what actually happened, and how China managed to thrive. How did we get here? Let's rewind. In early 2025, the Trump administration launched Phase 2 of its Get Tough on China policy, slapping a 25% tariff on a new list of Chinese goods. China hit back with tariffs on American products, and the US threatened to raise tariffs to 60% on nearly all Chinese imports. By June, those 60% tariffs hit high-tech goods, China's most ambitious industries. As of July 16, 2025, high tariffs are in place, negotiations are frozen, and both sides are digging in. This wasn't a single event, but a rapid escalation, each move triggering the next, reshaping global supply chains. The plan for quick action turned into a drawn-out struggle with global consequences. And the real twist? Who actually pays for these tariffs? Here's the trillion-dollar question. Who pays for these tariffs? The public was told China would, but that's not how it works. Tariffs are taxes on imports paid by American companies when they bring in Chinese goods. Most companies pass those costs to consumers, so prices go up for everyone. Studies show American importers bear over 90% of the tariff costs. Washing machines, for example, jumped 12% in price after tariffs. Even US-made products got pricier since there was less competition. The intention was to hurt China, but the immediate impact hit American wallets and businesses. The tariff strategy turned out to be a boomerang, hurting US consumers more than China. So, what did China do when faced with mounting trade tensions and tariffs from the United States? They didn't panic, they pivoted. Instead of reacting with fear or retreat, Chinese leaders took a calculated approach, analyzing the global landscape and quickly adapting their strategies to ensure the country's continued growth and stability. China expanded trade with the rest of the world, especially Southeast Asia, Africa, and Europe, thanks to years of Belt and Road investments. These massive infrastructure projects, railways, ports, highways, weren't just about building roads, they were about building relationships and opening new markets for Chinese goods and services. As Western markets became more challenging, China's global network allowed it to redirect exports and investments, keeping its economic engine running. ASEAN nations, a group of 10 Southeast Asian countries, quickly became China's top trading partners. Trade volumes soared as China deepened economic ties, signed new agreements, and invested in regional supply chains. This shift not only cushioned the blow from lost US trade, but also strengthened China's influence in one of the world's fastest-growing regions. When the US imposed tariffs on agricultural products, China started buying soybeans from Brazil and Argentina instead of the US. This move sent a clear message. China could find alternatives and wasn't dependent on any single supplier. It also helped foster new partnerships in South America, further diversifying China's import sources. But China didn't just look outward. It also boosted domestic consumption with subsidies and massive infrastructure projects, building a more self-sustaining economy. By investing in high-speed rail, affordable housing, and urban development, the government encouraged people to spend more at home, creating millions of jobs and stimulating local businesses. The dual circulation strategy focused on making Chinese consumers the engine of growth. This meant supporting innovation in retail, expanding digital payment systems, and making it easier for families to buy everything from groceries to electronics. The goal was clear: reduce reliance on exports and make the domestic market a powerful force in its own right. At the same time, China poured billions into tech and innovation, semiconductors, AI, 5G, to become self-reliant. By investing heavily in research and development, China aimed to close the technology gap with the West and ensure that future growth would be driven by homegrown breakthroughs, not foreign imports. The result? China diversified its economy, reduced its vulnerability to external shocks, and positioned itself for the future. Its global business networks grew stronger, and its companies became more competitive on the world stage. Instead of being cornered, China played a long-term game and played it well. By thinking several moves ahead, Chinese leaders turned challenges into opportunities, ensuring that the country would not just survive but thrive in a rapidly changing world. In the end, the tariffs didn't cripple China, they made it stronger and more independent. Factories kept humming, new industries emerged, and Made in China became a symbol of resilience and adaptability. The pivot to everywhere else wasn't just a reaction, it was a masterstroke in global strategy. Meanwhile, in America, the story was unfolding along a very different path. While policymakers in Washington hoped to reshape the economic landscape, the effects on everyday life were immediate and often unexpected. The main goal was to boost U.S. manufacturing and bring jobs back home. But instead of a manufacturing renaissance, Americans saw prices climbing at the grocery store, the gas pump, and nearly everywhere else. Inflation became a stubborn reality, making it harder for families to stretch their paychecks. Tariffs on imported goods meant that everyday essentials, from clothing to electronics, became more expensive. For many families, this meant making tough choices, cutting back on non-essentials, or searching for cheaper alternatives. The squeeze on household budgets was felt in every aisle and at every checkout counter. U.S. businesses that relied on Chinese components or materials suddenly faced higher costs. Some tried to absorb the losses, but many had no choice but to raise prices or cut back on staff. Profits shrank, and uncertainty grew, especially for small businesses already operating on thin margins. Some companies attempted to move their supply chains to other countries, hoping to avoid tariffs. But shifting production is a slow, expensive process, often taking years and millions of dollars. Many found that alternatives were limited or just as costly, leaving them stuck between a rock and a hard place. American exporters, especially farmers, were hit particularly hard by China's retaliatory tariffs. Crops like soybeans, once shipped in massive quantities to China, piled up unsold. For many rural communities, the loss of such a huge market was devastating, threatening livelihoods built over generations. In response, the government rolled out billions of dollars in aid to help struggling farmers and businesses. While this assistance kept some afloat, it was a temporary fix. The much-promised manufacturing boom failed to appear, and many communities continued to struggle. Meanwhile, many of the jobs that disappeared weren't just lost to overseas competition, they were lost to automation and new technology. Robots and machines replaced workers on assembly lines, making it clear that the challenges facing American workers went far beyond trade policy. The net result? Higher prices for consumers, headaches for business owners, and real pain for exporters. Despite all the disruption, the impact on China's growth was limited, while American families and businesses bore the brunt of the fallout. In the end, the U.S. found itself facing more economic hardship than its rival, with many left wondering if the cost was worth it. This wasn't just a US-China fight, the whole world felt the shockwaves. Global markets hate uncertainty, and the trade war created plenty of it, rattling stock markets and slowing investment. Some countries like Vietnam and Mexico benefited as companies shifted manufacturing, but they faced their own growing pains. International organizations warned that the conflict could fragment the global economy and slow growth for everyone. The WTO looked powerless as the two giants rewrote the rules. The world is now splitting into two economic blocks, one led by the US, the other by China. This decoupling makes global business harder and could slow innovation. The trade war's ripples are reshaping the very structure of our interconnected world. At the heart of this conflict is technology. The real battle is for tech supremacy, AI, 5G, semiconductors. US tariffs aim to slow China's tech rise, but instead, they push China to double down on self-sufficiency. China is investing hundreds of billions in its own semiconductor and AI industries, racing to catch up. The world is splitting into two tech ecosystems, one American, one Chinese. Your devices and apps may soon depend on which side you're on. The US still leads in some areas, but China is closing the gap fast. The tech race is the main event, and tariffs are just the opening round. So, what's next? As the world watches, the relationship between China and the United States stands at a crossroads, with both nations weighing their next moves carefully. The choices they make now will have ripple effects across the globe, influencing economies, politics, and even the daily lives of millions. In the short term, China's strategy appears to be working. Its economic growth remains steady, and its global influence is steadily rising. Chinese leaders are leveraging international summits and trade partnerships to expand their reach, positioning China as a central player in global affairs. But beneath the surface, China faces significant challenges. An aging population threatens to slow its workforce and strain social services, while high levels of debt loom over its financial system. These issues could limit China's ability to sustain its current pace of growth and innovation. Additionally, China is on a long and difficult road toward achieving true technological self-sufficiency. Despite major investments in high-tech industries, it still relies on foreign technology for critical components, especially in areas like semiconductors and advanced manufacturing. Meanwhile, the United States is grappling with the consequences of its own policies. High tariffs, intended to pressure China, have ended up hurting American businesses and consumers, leading to factory closures and rising costs for everyday goods. Public patience in the U.S. is wearing thin, as families feel the pinch and workers worry about job security. Many Americans are questioning whether the current approach is truly serving their interests. America now faces a critical choice. Should it continue to escalate tensions and risk further economic pain, or seek a new path that balances competition with cooperation? Political leaders are divided and the debate is intensifying. There are opportunities for both sides to find common ground, whether through renewed trade talks, joint efforts on global challenges like climate change, or new frameworks for technological collaboration. One thing is clear: the rivalry between the US and China will define the global landscape for years to come. Their competition will shape markets, alliances, and the very rules of international engagement. We can expect periods of truce and cooperation punctuated by flare-ups and renewed tensions. Each side will test the other's resolve, and the world will be watching closely. The world must adjust to a new normal. Two giants locked in a complex strategic competition that touches every corner of the globe. Other nations will have to navigate this landscape carefully, balancing their own interests amid the shifting power dynamics. The key question remains: can this rivalry be managed peacefully, with both sides finding ways to coexist and collaborate where possible? Or will miscalculation and mistrust push the world toward more dangerous territory, with the risk of conflict rising as competition intensifies? Ultimately, the decisions made by leaders in Beijing and Washington today will shape the world for generations to come. The stakes could not be higher, and the world is holding its breath, hoping for wisdom, restraint, and a vision for a more stable future. What have we learned? The 2025 trade war didn't go as planned. Tariffs failed to bring China to its knees. Instead, China proved resilient and resourceful. The old tools of economic warfare don't work in a deeply connected world. What hurts one, hurts all. We're entering a new multipolar economic order, US and China as rival poles, with others like the EU and India rising. Navigating this complex world is the challenge of our time. The story isn't just about winners and losers, it's about how the rules of the global game are being rewritten. Understanding this new reality is the first step to figuring out where we all go from here.